Hey, hello, and welcome to another exciting tutorial. Now, in this tutorial, I will teach you how to create a zip folder using PHP. Alright, so if you've watched at least 2 videos on my channel, it's time to hit that subscribe button because it will help me to make more videos. Win-win. Alright, so moving on. Why would you need a zip folder? Well, some time back I had a website where people would download music. So it would be nice to have them select certain amount of music and then they can create a zip folder to download a zip instead of one file at a time. Or you could have a website where it's like Google Drive of sorts, and you want your users to be able to select a couple of files and then download them as one. Okay, so let's see what we need in order to accomplish this. So of course you need to have a server installed on your system. Mine is XAMPP. So there's plenty of tutorials online showing how to install XAMPP if you haven't yet. So just make sure that Apache and MySQL are running by hitting these 2 buttons here. And once we are done with that, we are good to go. Can minimize that. And then get a text editor. Notepad will do just fine, but of course I am using Sublime Text. Nothing special about it, it's just a text editor. And then important now is to go to your server folder. In terms of XAMPP, this is the htdocs folder. In C, XAMPP htdocs, and go to, in that same folder, create a new folder called zip, which I created here. So as you can see, it's an empty folder, nothing to see here. But then open your browser and head over to localhost/zip, and you'll be in the parent directory. Okay, so in order to stop it from showing this and show our PHP file instead, let's create a new file in our text editor. Hit save. And let's save this one to our folder. That's drive C, XAMPP, htdocs, and zip. And then let's save index.php. Very good. And now when we refresh our page, we get this empty page. Very nice. So in order to create a zip folder, it's actually very easy with PHP. So let me show you just how easy this is. So first of all, in order to understand more how this zip thing works, you can go to your Google and Google zip archive. This is what I googled, zip archive PHP, and then get the one with php.net. And then when we come here, you will see that there's the zip archive class. So it's a class that comes with PHP, and this is what it contains. So all these are the methods that you can use in order to accomplish your task with zip folders. So there's a lot you can do here. There's extract, there's opening one, adding files, and so on. But the ones that we're going to need today are very few. For example, we need add file, we need close, of course, to close our folder, and then we need open. And that's pretty much it. So now the thing is, these same functions, if you, let's say for example, let's go here and look at the close. So obviously I don't need to explain much about the close. Zip archive close closes the zip archive after creating it. Now it's important to note here that here they're displaying these as static methods, but we'll be using instantiation, so it won't look like this when we are using our syntax. Just to keep that in mind. And then let's go to add file. So add file here has a few parameters here, the file path, the file name, and a few flags here. So we're going to see how all this ties in together, and these are the flags right here. So instead of doing all this, let me show you how we can actually make one using these available methods. So let's come back here and let's create a very simple PHP file. So let's add some PHP tags here. I will, of course, zoom in so we can see properly. Now, of course, the class name is zip archive. So let's create a new zip archive. Let's say zip. So this is just a variable name, so you can say A if you wanted to. It's not really important what you name it. So we'll say new zip archive, like so. So that's how you instantiate a class, of course. So now that we have a new zip archive, what do we do with it? So first of all, let's open the zip archive here. Okay, so let's do let's say zip, like that, because this is a class name. So to call our methods, this is what I meant by we're not going to be using the static versions. We're going to be using the instance of this thing. So we're going to say open, like so, and save that. Now, if we come back here to where the documentation is, let's find one that is saying open. So this is open right here. So what does open require? So it requires two things here, as you can see. These are not optional, of course. So it requires a string for the file name that you are naming. This is the name of the zip archive. That's what it's going to be named. And then these are flags. So the flags are not optional as well. You need a few flags there. Now, flags, what are these flags anyway? So it says right here, these are the flags you can add. So these are constants in a way. This is probably 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. But you can use text in order to be able to remember them better. Okay. So of course, override, if you want to see what the flags mean, you can just click on flags here and it will take you to these predefined constants, right? And then you can see what each one of them mean. So obviously create will create the archive if it does not exist, which is probably a good thing, right? And then there's override. This one will override if it already exists. So I think we do need both of those. So the first thing we need is the file name. So let's just call it my zip, for example, myzip.zip. Obviously it needs the file extension of zip. And then let's add a flag as required. So I got this one, I copied this one, zip archive create. So keep note that you use the static version of these constants, of course. So that, now you can add more than one flag by using the pipe, like so. So once you use that pipe there, you can put another flag. So for example, I want you to create the folder if it doesn't exist, of course, and I want you to override if it already exists. So this is what the override does. That's the flag we have here. Let me just paste that just in case I misspelled it. So as you can see, simple and straightforward. We create a new zip archive and then we open it so we can add files to it, right? But we do not have files. So let's create a new file, just a simple file in our folder. I'm going to excuse me, create a new text document. And for simplicity, I will just call it file.txt, like that, so that we can have something to add. Sorry about that. So let's do zip add file. Careful with the capitalization of F there. So let's look at add file. What does it require from us? So let's come back here. This is add file, right? So it requires a file path, of course, the path to the file, and the actual file name. Okay, and since these guys are equated to something, even this is optional actually, because it's got an equal sign here to something here, so it means it's optional. You can leave these out. So all you really need is just the file path, but it's usually a good idea to give it the file name as well, if you want to name it differently or whatever, but just the file path is more important. So let's add our file path there. So we named it file.txt, but maybe we want to give it a different name. Let's say myfile.txt, just the file display there, or just my file like that. Well, that's entirely up to you. This is optional, so you can leave it out if you want. And then finally, we close our zip file. It's that simple, folks. And that is it. It's done. But I want us to see something on the screen just to show whether, because this returns a true or false. If the zip archive was created successful, this will return true. And if not, it will return false. So we could just do a var dump. I could have said echo, something like this, echo that. But the problem is if it's false, it's going to be 0, and then I won't see anything on screen. So I'd rather use var dump because it will show me the type of data as well. That way I don't get an empty string when it's false. Okay, so easy peasy, right? Let's come back here to our index page and refresh. So let's see what we get. So keep in mind that in our folder, these are the files that we have, okay? So let me refresh the page. Ooh. So uncaught error, the class name zip archive not found. Well, that's because I forgot the R here, of course. So careful with those spellings there, quite tricky. So let me refresh again, and then I see true, meaning the archive was created. So let's check in the folder just to be sure. And as you can see, there's my zip there. And if we open it, and sure enough, we have our file there named my file, but we forgot to add the file extension, and that's why we get that. So the size is 0 because there's no data, and there's no checksum is 0 as well, which is to be expected, right? So here I can change a few things, maybe add the file extension here. And then if I run this again, since we have override, it's still going to just override that zip folder. Let's come back here and check the result. And there we go. Now it looks more like a text file. Okay, so this is well and good. This is how simple it is to actually add files to a zip, to create a zip folder and add files there. But this is not really it's not comprehensive. So if you are the at least the intermediate user of PHP, I think you can stop here because that's the end of the tutorial. But for the rest of us, we can create something more user-friendly here. Let's add some buttons and so on. That way we can select different files and not have to just add file.txt there. Okay, let's make it a little bit more interesting, shall we? So what I will do is I will close the PHP tags there, and let's add some HTML like so. So we're just going to call this one zip like that. And I want us to be able to wait. I want us to be able to make this more robust, so we can select files randomly and add them to a zip folder, something like that. Okay, so I will call this one the wrapper. Let me add an ID there. I'll say wrapper, something like so. And then let's add some items in here. So first of all, I will add an input of type file, so we can select files, right? Very important. So let's say select some files to zip, and let's put a break tag over there. Very good, like this. And then I want us to be able to see what files we've added down here. So I will create a div here like so, and then I will name it yeah, these are just random names, so you can use whatever names you want there. That's all good. And let's add a few styles, shall we? So let's say style like this, I'm not big on adding external CSS files when teaching tutorials because it creates an extra possibility of errors with certain users. But you can insert right here. You can insert a CSS file, an external version, instead of having to type everything in here. Also, sometimes adding some metadata is nice, like that, at least so that the char set is UTF-8, like that. Okay, enough of the house cleaning. Let's hash wrapper, like that. Let's add some styles for our div. So first of all, before we even go this way, let me come back here. Let me add one more input here. Input, and this one will be of type button. And then instead of the name, let's put a value, what will show on the button itself. Let's do that, and that will be zip, maybe something like this. And then let me add a few break tags here. Break. Ooh, like so. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. Let me refresh. Oh, now before I refresh, this code will run immediately. I run the page, so we don't want that. So what we will do is let's just make it run sometimes when we hit the post button, right? Let's do it that way. So I'm going to say if let's check whether something was posted. So let's use the server and say server request method, like so. If the server request method is equal to post, like that, then something was definitely posted. Let's do something. So we want our code to swing into action. Let me push that down here so we can encapsulate everything in there. Okay, so only when we post something will this run. So that means we will need to turn this into a form so we can actually post something. Okay, pretty good. So let's do that. Form. What method do we want on this form? We want it to have the post method, like this. Good. Then let's move that to down here, and let's move on. Tab these over like so. Now let me refresh, and this is what we get. So select some files to zip, and then browse, and then zip. So this is nice, but let's add some CSS at least, right? So you see, if I click here, I get to browse some files, but let's make it look a bit nicer. So what I will do is deal with the wrapper. Let me actually put the styles above the body so that I can actually style the body as well. And this, like this. Okay, so let's deal with the body. Body. So let's say font family, so we can have some nice fonts. Let's use what's available everywhere. And then what else? Background color. I don't want it exactly white. I'll just say EEE, something like that, just slightly gray. And then the wrapper, I want the background color to be white. I want it to have some padding in there so that text is not right at the edge of it. And I want it to have a slight border of some kind, so say solid, thin, and that gray. And I want it to have rounded corners, so I'll say border radius 10 pixels. And I want it to go in the middle, so I'll say margin auto, something like this. So let's come back here and refresh. Let's see. Okay, looking better. But let's limit its width for a second here. I will say width 600 pixels. So back. refresh, and there we go. Okay, so now let's style these here. So let's style the button. So for the button here, let's make it nice and big. So I will say dot button. I'm using the dot because I want this to be a class. So say padding 1em, and then I will say what next, some border radius as well, maybe 5 pixels, and some margin around it of let's say 10 pixels, and let's give it a background color, shall we, of black. This is just temporary. Let's also do some color here of white for the text. I think that sums it up. So let's refresh and see what's going on. Refresh. Ooh, why isn't it working? Well, it's because we haven't told the button to actually use that class. So say class button. Very well. Let's refresh. Ooh, not so. I think we need it to be thicker than that. So let's give it a minimum width of let's say 80 pixels or something. Nice. Now we can right click, inspect element, and then we can change the background color to something more lovable. Yes. Okay, copy that, and let's put that color there, but also let's remove the border. So we're going to say border none. Okay, I think we are done with our button. It's looking much better, and let's give it a cursor of pointer so that when we are over it, we have a hand instead of this. And also let's do something like wait a second, let's say button hover, like I saw. That way when we hover over it, we can change the background color to something lighter. And of course we can do that by inspecting the element and then adjusting it to either darker or lighter. Let's go darker. Very nice. Let me put that there. Now the thing is, this is a button, so if I hover on it, you see what's happening there. Very nice. And if obviously I want that to be slower, I can add a transition. So all this is just cosmetic stuff. I can just say O and then say 0.5 seconds is something like this, right? Then once I hover on it, it will move slowly like that. It looks much better. Okay, so this is cosmetic stuff, but since we have a button like this, and we might want to have different colors of buttons, so instead of saying button here, let's just say this one is blue, something like this. Okay, let's do that. I'll say dot blue and do that, and then I will get this color, remove it completely from there and bring it here. So what I've done here is created a button class, but then which without a background color, but then I can put blue here and the hover that happens on the blue, but then it will remove the color from this. Oh, I haven't saved, my bad. Okay, so it will remove the color from there. Well and good. All we have to do is just add two classes here and blue like that. So we say blue button, and then we are back to normal. Now the advantage of doing it this way is because we don't need to repeat these styles for every button. We can just say green, for example. I'll copy this and change the blue to green. So say green like this, and then I can inspect the element and create a green button. Ooh, there we go. Very nice. So from that green button, I can change that like so. And then I can make a darker version for the hover like so. as well and paste that here. So this way we can have blue and green buttons that are working just fine. Okay, so goody with the designing, very nice. Now let's try and add some files. So if I click browse here, and of course browse, yes, and then if I select a file, it will show me I've selected this file. But you know, the problem with this is we are selecting one file at a time, because if I select another file here, even though I hold down Control, it's just allowing me to select one file. Now there's a way to change this. Of course, I can go down here to the file attribute and just say multiple, like that, so that we can select multiple files. Okay, now if I click here and select multiple files, of course it will allow me to do that, and open, and you just say 6 files selected. So this is a step further in our situation. But the problem is, let me upload these files so that you see the problem that's going on here. So let me come back here to the very top, and I want to comment out all this because I don't want it to start running once I hit the submit button. So let me come back here, and this one will be type submit and not button. Okay, so because it's a form, so we can submit that. And then the name of this is, let's give it a name of file. Okay, so that input is a type of file and named file. But this is only one name. So how can it carry multiple files? So let's see if we can answer that question. Okay, so another thing that's important here on the form, if you want to upload files, you must change the encoding type. So say enc type, which is encoding type. This one should go to multi-part, like that, /form -data. It must look exactly like this, otherwise we won't get any files. So in here, all we want to do is echo out what files we have. So I will say print readable, and instead of the post variable, I will look for the files variable because that's the one that carries the files. Okay, so let me hit refresh, and what's going on? Why have 6 files still selected? Okay, so let me hit browse, and let me select a couple of files here and say open. So 3 files selected, and let's submit. Okay, now if you notice here, I know it's hard to see, but only one file has been uploaded. Now to be very sure about this, let's display this array a little bit better. So let's use some pre-tags here, shall we? So opening pre-tag and closing pre-tag, of course, like that. That's where we get to see better. So let me refresh the page, and you can see there's only one file here. All these are attributes of one file. So we have its name, its type, the temp name where it's stored on the server, and there's no error, and the size. So this is one file, and yet we had selected 3. So this is not a very good way of doing things. So let's use some JavaScript instead, so that we can capture all those files and upload them at once. Okay, so don't worry, the JavaScript is optional. If you want to be able to just upload one file, you can make it in such a way that the user can upload one file at a time, and then they are stored on the server, and then afterwards the user can select the files they want and then create a zip folder. But I want to show you a way in which they can just select a bunch of files at once, and then I think that's more convenient. So let's go down that route, shall we? So first of all, let's change this browse. This browse input, this file input, is notorious at being very hard to add some CSS to it, right? It's very hard to style. So let me show you that just now. Let me just style it exactly like the button here. Let me just copy the classes and put them there. and I will refresh the page. And you see how it looks there. It's not bad per se. You can have it this way. No problem actually. Problem is on different browsers it looks very different. So you could skip this whole thing by just adding a label to it, which is what I usually like to do. I will put it inside a label. So label like that. And then so just make sure it's inside the label. And then the label will have some text here saying select some files. Or you can say click to select. Click to select. This way you know every browser will show this text specifically. So let's refresh and see. Oops, no need to post. So click to select. So now even though this thing is here, if I click here, I still get the selector, which is pretty good. So we don't need to see this div here or this input here. So what we will do is just add a style here, I guess. Style, and we're going to say display none. Like that. Refresh. Good. And then when we click here, we still get this thing. But then we can't see what files were selected or if any files were selected, but we can remedy that rather quickly. So what I will do is get this class here and move it out of here into the label. Just make sure there's more space here. So instead of blue, let's use the green button. Like that. That way it looks like a button. There we go. The only problem is because it's a label, it's not really a solid thing. That's why it looks like this. It's wrapping around the the situation here. So to fix that problem, let's go to where it says button here and just make sure that we have a display of inline block like that. That way it becomes kind of like a div or a button or something. There we go. Click to select. Very nice. But then we need our break tags, of course. Let's put them outside here. Maybe 2 even, just to make it look better. Okay, so click to select. Select, we can select multiple and open. Very nice, but we need to see that we've selected some files. So down here, we can use JavaScript. Since we're going the JavaScript way anyway, we can use JavaScript to list the files down here. So that would not be difficult to do because we have this div right here with the ID of display. So usually when you want to capture edit items using JavaScript, what we normally do is add some classes. So let's use classes instead. I think that's the standard way of doing it. So we're going to say JS like that, and they say display. This way we know that this class is entirely used by JavaScript just to identify this div. So in the same way, I'm going to copy this because I want to be able to identify this thing here when I want to get the files. So I will put a class over here as well. That will be JS files like that. That's what I'll call it. So these are just random names. So I hope I'm not confusing you with all this, but this is just the preparation to make the user experience a little bit better when they are trying to zip their files. So let's come down here and add some JavaScript. So we will type the script tags like so. So like with the styles as well, you can put an external JavaScript file. That's entirely up to you. But I recommend you add your scripts in here, you edit this, and then when you are satisfied with the results, then you can copy everything and save it to an external file and just include it in here. But for testing, it's better to do it right here. Okay, so continuing, let's create a function here. Now, the reason we create functions and not just put our code directly here is because we don't want the code to run immediately the page is loaded. we want to be able to run the code at a very specific time, so we put the code inside an envelope called a function. So say function something like show files. We'll call it show files, and then we'll put an E there so we can capture whatever is being brought in. Now usually instead of E, I think let's put files there. Now this doesn't really matter what you name it. It's better to name it what it contains, like files in this case, but it's just a variable, so don't worry about it. What's important though is here what you send to this. So let's get this function right there and call it from here. We want to call it when the content of this input changes. So we're going to use the onChange trigger and put our function there, show files, sorry. And then what do we want to send here? We want to send the files. So how do we send the files? It's easy peasy. We're just going to say this.files. Now the reason we're saying this.files is this represents this element right here, this whole entire thing. And then the reason we say .files, it's because it's got an attribute called files, which is what stores the files that you select here. So we're saying this.files should be sent to this function. Very nice. So we are down here. Once the files have been sent, what do we want to do? We want to get this div and display the files. Okay, so first of all, let's come back here. And I want to grab this thing here. So it's easy to grab this by just saying var. You can name it whatever you want. Display div maybe is more descriptive. Display div is equal to document. So type document dot, let's not get element by ID because we're using a class anyway. You can use class name, but let's use the latest, which is query selector. It's more robust, or verbose. Oh. Yes, so since we are looking for a class, we're going to use a dot and not a hash like that if we're looking for an ID. So dot JS display like that. Okay, so now that we've grabbed this item from there, let's empty it first. So I'm going to say display div dot inner HTML is equal to an empty string. So we empty it first like that. Okay, and then we set it to something else. So what I want to set it to is to these files here. Now this files is an array. So let's just loop through it. So say for you can use any of these loops here like that. So just type it like that. So we are looping through the files array and getting one file at a time. So what I will say is display.innerHTML should be equal to, so I'll put this here. Now this is the actual file, but I don't want the actual file content. I want just the name. So I'll just say .name like this. But I want to add to what's already in here, so I'll put the plus sign. So display inner HTML, whatever is there, which is an empty string, adds to it. And then the next time over, it's going to add and so on. But I need to also add a break tag. So I'm going to add a plus at the end there to concatenate a break tag so that they are not all on the same line. So let's give it a shot, shall we? Refresh and let's add one file. So as you can see, here's the file that we added. Wow, it's working very well. So let's select a couple of these or several of these, and there we go. Those are the names. Let's try some other stuff with longer names. There we go. So we could say something like, instead of empty string here, say files added full colon break tag like this, right? So let's refresh and let's add a few files. Where is my shift key? Open. So files added, this is the list. At least now the user will know what files they've actually added to the list. But we still have that problem where if we hit zip, we just get one of the files and none of the others. So this is not good. So let's use JavaScript to send this data instead. So we're going to use Ajax. Now, the way Ajax works is it sends data to the server without interrupting what's happening here, without having to refresh the page. Okay? So we could have it, actually, let's just use one file. Let it call itself from the server. So I will show you how it will call itself. So here we have this echo that shows us what it shows us what we've sent to the server. Okay, so I think we're going to let it be here for now. Now, what I want to do is initiate this posting thing through Ajax. So the first thing I want to do is I want to disable the submit so that it doesn't really submit. So now this becomes useless at this point. So even if you omit this, this will still work. And then you can change the submit button to just a button. Instead of submit, you just say button. Or you can just tell it to ignore its if you must have a submit button here, just for in case of a fallback or something like that. I'll show you how to make sure that it doesn't really submit. So let's create another function and call it from here. So we're going to set this to the on-click listener so that when somebody clicks on this button, it runs a function here. So what will that function be? Let's just call it send underscore files, like this. Now we don't really want to capture anything in there, so let's just put the word event to capture the event. So let me copy that and come here and create a new function. So say function send files, like that. Okay, but event is quite long. Let's just change it to E for easier. We won't even be using it anyway. So send files. So how exactly do we send files here? So in order to use JavaScript to send the files, the first thing we have to do before we do that is to say e.prevent default. So what we're telling this thing is to stop its submitting behavior. So let's see if that actually works by refreshing the page, and then let's add a couple of files. And then when I click on this, you'll see that the page has not refreshed. So we are in business. Very good. So now that we are not refreshing the page, let's do something with this newfound power. Okay. So let's create an XML HTTP request. Let's do that. So if you're using jQuery, I'm sure it's easier to do this, but it's important to understand what's going on behind the scenes. This is why I try as much as possible to do everything from scratch. So var, we're going to call it XML for simplicity, but you can call it anything. You can call it Ajax, for example, is equal to new XML in capital letters, H in capital letters, TTP in small letters, request with a capital letter there. It has to turn blue like that, otherwise you've done something wrong. So to send an Ajax request is very simple. You just say Ajax new Ajax, and then you just say ajax.open, so we can open the link. And then here we're just going to say we're opening we're sending a post request. And then the next thing is you're supposed to tell it what file you are sending this information to. But in our case, we are sending it to exactly the same file. We don't have another external file that we are sending to this, so let's just leave it empty like so. And then let's make sure we say true there to make sure that it will send this data what's that word? Asynchronous, something like this. Asynchronously. which means it doesn't disturb what's happening with you here. So the user will be able to still click other things while this is happening, which could be dangerous sometimes, but we'll see. Ajax.close. Oh, sorry, actually, it's .send. Okay, so this is as simple as it gets. So once I do this, this is the basic configuration. So once I do this, it will receive, it will read this file from the server and then show me the result. Now the result is what's echoed. So first of all, the result will contain the echoes here, and then it will contain the entire HTML page. So let's see that in action. So how exactly do we get the result from here? Well, we start listening to the result before we send, because it's very important to listen first, because you never know. If you try to set up the listening after you've sent, you may miss the result, because the result may come back immediately before you even activate all that stuff. So we activate it first before we send the data. So we can do that by saying ajax.add event listener. So you can do it this way and say add, you can say something like onload is equal to function. And then you create your function here like this. And then you can check for a result. But a better way to do it is to add an event listener. So we'll say add, whoa, what did I destroy here? Add event listener, like that. What are we listening for? We are listening for the ready state change. That's what we're listening for. And then we create a function for it, and then we open and close the brackets for the function, and then we put our semicolon at the end. But because we want to put a lot of code in there, we're going to have to open it up like that and put an if statement. So if you did the earlier one, which is the onload, it's exactly like what we've done now here. Then you can just put this inside it. So say if the ajax.status is equal to 200. So we're looking for a 200 status, which is returned by the server when everything went well, and ajax.readyState is equal to 4. Now this is JavaScript, so make sure this is capital S there, like that. Okay, so good. So at this point we have a result. If this is true, then we have a result. So the result will be contained in ajax.response text, like so. Actually it's not a function, so just that is enough. But we want to alert ourselves to this, so I'll say alert. Very good. So let's see what we get. I'll have to refresh the page, and let me select just one item here and hit send. And as you can see, as predicted, I get the entire page back like this, so which means everything went well. You can see there's an empty array here because it didn't actually send any files, so the array is empty. And then we have the doc type here, and we get everything, the entire page back, but we don't want to get the entire page back. So what we're going to tell it is that if there's a post request, when you get to this point, just die like that. Yeah, I'll just do it the easy way. Now if you want to die with a message, this is when it's a good idea to use the brackets and say, yeah, we died, or something like this. But that's enough. So let me come back here, and I don't actually need to refresh the page because this part is part of the server. It will be read again. So if I click on zip, you see now what I get is something easier to read, because just that top part I get. Very nice. Okay, so now how do we make sure that we actually send a file? So let's get back down here to the send files. So remember that the files are contained in this .files, yes? So all you need to do is grab this and then get the files attributes from it, and we'll have our files. Yeah. Okay, so let me say, let's grab this using the JS files like that. So since we already have the code for grabbing stuff, I will duplicate that and move it to my new function. Over here, yes, send files. But we want to get something else, not the display, like that. And then we're going to name it files. Very creative, huh? Files. Okay, so files is equal to this item. I don't want to do anything with the item, so I just say dot files at the end here, like this, right? Or I could just say files is equal to files dot files. Same thing, if I remove this part here like that. So this is exactly so instead, for a shortcut, instead of having to get the files themselves, I'll just get it directly there. So that files is now equal to the files contained in this item. So good. So we have our files, but the files are inside a loop. And also, I want us to create a form, kind of like a form where we are sending these things. So let's create a form here real quick. I'll say var form is equal to new form, capital F, data, capital D, like that. That's how you create a form of your own. And now I want to add each and every file here into the form. Okay, so easy peasy. I'll just do a loop in this case, and then I'm looping through the files. So files like that, just the same way we did this loop right here. And then in each of these, I will add, actually, let's move prevent default right at the top here so that we don't get that in case this takes too long. So prevent default there immediately, and then let's add the file. So how do we add a file to the form? Well, I'm glad you asked. So it's very easy. We just say form.append like this. We're appending, and then let's give it a what you say, a name, for example. So what I want to do, remember that we have this I is changing every time through the loop, so we can use I to give us because if we use the same name for all the files, if I say, for example, file like that, and then I'll add this item here. So let me add a comma here and then move this here. So remember, we are not adding the name of the file, so we're not saying .name, but we just want to add the file itself. So this is how you add it. But because there are many of these, if we loop through here and just add them to the same location, then it's going to replace, and we're going to have only one file. So let's see that in action, then we can change it. So once we have that, it's now easy to just send the form afterwards. So we'll send the form here like that. Easy peasy, right? So let me refresh and let me click here and let's add a few of these. I keep pressing the cap lock here. And then when I hit zip, you see that we have sent one file in the file location, but it's only one file, but we need to send all of these. So this is where we have to add a dynamic variable here. So I'll say this, and this it's add I, not one I, like that. So that the first one will be file 0, file 1, file 2, etc., etc. So let me refresh and let's do this again. Moment of truth and hit zip. And now you see we have this item, we have that item, and we have finally this item. So we've sent 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Very nice. Okay, so now that we are sending those, let's upload them. Now this is very easy to do, so fear not, for it is easy to do. So we know that everything is inside the files variable. Okay, now let me come back here and do this again. So as you can see here, we have name. That's the name of our file, so we're going to need that. We have type, maybe not so much because we are willing to zip any file type, but if you want to limit what types are sent, you can check for this and make sure it says image JPEG or what other file type you want, but we're not going to be doing that here. And then the temp name is where the file is sent on the server, so we have to copy it from here and put it where we want. Error equals 0 means there were no errors in uploading this particular file. And if you want to limit the size of upload, you can check using the size. Alrighty then. So now we're not going to be checking the sizes and all that stuff here. It'll just make I have other tutorials where I do this, so it'll just make this thing much longer than needed. So say for each files. So we're looping through the files one by one. And this one will be the file array, like that. Okay, so what do we do? Every time here we just move the file. That's all we do. Move uploaded file. That's it. So the file here. Now what file name do we get? Well, we'll get the file name from the array itself. And this will be inside. Oh, sorry, my bad. I need that key. I forgot. Oops. Okay, so file key, because remember that these keys have a number at the end. There's file 3, file 2, file 1, but I won't know which one I'm dealing with. So I want to be able to get, wait a minute. I actually don't need that key at all. So bummer. No need for your key. Thank you very much. So here, file array, and we are looking for the name. Yes, name, like that. And what is our destination? Well, yes, what is our destination? So let's construct a destination here for a second. Now we want to create a folder. We don't want things to just go into the server randomly. So let's create a folder. I will call this one folder uploads with a slash. So you can add other folders in front of this, that's fine. But let's check if it exists first. Using file exists, file name, and folder. Yes, folder. So if it doesn't exist, if not file exists, surprisingly even folders use file exists, we're going to make the directory using make dir. So we'll make the folder. Of course, we'll give ourselves some permission to write to it using that number right there. And then we'll make sure that we set this to true, just in case we needed to add subfolders over there. And that's it. So this makes sure that the file exists no matter what. The folder, sorry. Now, we need a destination here. Now the destination will be the folder plus the file. Simple enough, yes? So let's add folder here. But in front of the folder, let's concatenate a file name. So the file name will come from here. There. Sorry, this is my bad here. The source is not the file name, it's the temp here. Temp there. Okay, temp name. Good. So tmp underscore name, like this. Okay, so far so good. We are moving our files, but it's important to check if there are no errors as well. So it's important to say if, let's come back here, if error is equal to 0, like this. This is the only time we're supposed to do this, if there was no error. Also, this would be the place to check for the size. We can say and size, okay? You make sure that the size is less than a specific number. Maybe you have a variable called size. and the variable will be here. Let's make that variable right there. Size is equal to 10. Now we want 10 megabytes in our case, right? So you could change it to 100 or whatever it is. But the problem is these units are in bytes, not even in kilobytes. So to get megabytes, you have to multiply a couple of times. So I'm going to say size is equal to size by 1024 by 1024. So that's a megabyte now. Okay, so just change this number to whatever MBs you want to deal with. If you want this to be in GBs, just multiply by another 1024 or so. That should do it. Okay, so we're making sure that this is less than this size, and then we move the uploaded file. And that's it, actually. So let's come back here and see that in action. So if now I refresh the page, I don't need to refresh the page actually. Just click zip. And let's go to our folder. And now as you can see, we have uploads. And if we open, we have our files. Very nice. So that's how you upload multiple files. Let's delete these old files that we don't need. Yes. So we only have index and we have the uploads folder with our content there. Very nice. Okay, so now the only thing we need to do is once we upload them, we need to create a zip folder. Okay, so now that we already know how to do that, it's going to be easy, isn't it? Yes. So let's do that. So after the uploading here, what I want to do is read from the folder to make sure that I get the files that I have uploaded. Okay. But since I already have the destinations here, I might not need to read from the folder at all. I can just get the files that have been uploaded right now and then unzip them. Yes, yes. So what I will do here is I'll say files, new files. I'll say something like this. New files is equal to false. Or let's equate it to an empty array, shall we? Like that. Okay. So every time I add I move a file here, I'll add it to my files there. So I'll say new files like that, add is equal to, and I'll copy this and put it there. Okay, so new files will contain all the new files that I have added. Very nice. So here, I'll just need to loop through it and add them to the zip folder. So let's create a new zip archive, shall we? But we have this code already over here, so no need to suffer. Cut that, put it here. Very good, very good. So zip is equal to new zip archive. Now, this is important. Oh, excuse me. What do we name our zip archive anyway? Yeah. So the thing is, we didn't provide an input here to give it a name. So we could do that. Let's do that rather quickly here. Let me say, where is this? I'll put an input here, and this one will be of type text, and the name will be, it doesn't really matter. Let's see what class we can add there instead. I think that's about it. The class will be named text. So let's style it here using text. I'll say the width should be equal to 90%. And then I'll say the height. Actually, instead of all that, let me just say border, solid, thin, that gray color. Oh, my bad. Why do I keep typing that? Oh my god. Okay, so border radius here, border radius 10 pixels, and some padding of 10 pixels, and font size of 14 pixels. Okay, so let's see how wonderful this looks now. There we go. And then let's add autofocus here so that it always comes to this autofocus. Very nice. Select, okay, let's put a placeholder as well. So say placeholder, zip file name. Okay, so we are allowed to leave this empty if the user doesn't want. So we can say zip file name, and let's put in brackets optional so they can know this is optional. Zip file name optional. Okay, now we should also grab this and send it as we are sending our data. So the class is text, but let's also add another class of JS text, like that. So let's grab this as well, copy. I'll come down here to where we are sending the files, where we grab this other one with files, but we also grab this one. We just name it text for simplicity. Okay, so how do we add that? So we're going to add that first, the same way we added these files here, but at the top here. You can really put this anywhere, it doesn't really matter. So here I'm going to say text or title or something. Let me just say title or file name. File name. That's entirely up to you what you want, but remove the I there since I is undefined at that point. And then instead of files here, we're going to get the value from there. So I'm just going to say text.value, because text is the actually we can just do it right there, text.value, so that by the time it's here we already have the value. So let's say text.trim to make sure that we trim the trailing and the leading spaces. Okay, so we've added it to our form. Very nice. But keep in mind that because it's just text and it's not a file, it will not be inside the files. It will be inside the post variable like this. So let us set the file name here. So I'm going to say zip file name, very long, is equal to post, what did we name it? I think it was text. Yes. No, it was file name, so we appended it as file name. So let's come back here, file name, like that. But it's possible it to be empty sometimes because it's optional, right? So let's put an if statement instead. So I'll copy this, I'll put an if statement and say if is set. So if this is set, oh wait a minute, of course it's going to be set. So what we will ask is if it's empty or not, right? If this is equal to empty like this, let's use trim here to make sure that we trim the leading and otherwise spaces. So if trim, and then okay, when setting the file names here, it's important to check to confirm that the file name does not have only has letters and spaces, because file names can't have anything more than that. So I'll say trim, if trim file name is equal to empty, is not equal to empty, right? Let's put a question mark there. Then zip file name will be equal to the file name. Otherwise, it will be equal to, let's create a file name at random. Let's say my zip. We're just going to call it my zip dot zip. Oh, let's not put the dot yet. Let's just say my zip. So if this is not empty, we'll call it by whatever name was submitted, but if it is, we'll use my zip. Then here, let's make sure that it matches what we want. Okay. So what we're going to do is preg replace. Okay. Let's check if it conforms to our standards. So I'll say if preg match. Now preg match is for checking out what's this? Is for using regular expressions to search. So the subject here is the file name. So I want to know if it matches this. If it doesn't match, I will make sure that I set it to my zip. So say file name let me do this here. Let me do a dot equals here to concatenate to the end of the file name. I want to add a dot zip just to make sure it's a zip file. Okay, so let me recap here a little bit. So if the user typed something, let's set this to what the user typed. But if it's empty, then let's give it a generic name. Okay, and then let's make sure that this is fit for a file name, because if there are slashes there, it's going to cause problems. There will be errors and it will fail to run. So you can also do a preg replace if you don't want to create a generic name, you just want to remove the unwanted items. You can use preg replace instead of preg match, but I don't want to have to go through the hassle of doing that. If they type something unwanted, let's just get rid of it. So here, how do we check? Well, checking is simple. We're just going to add a pattern here to follow. So I'll say the pattern should have at least A to Z. Those are small letter A to Z, capital A to capital Z. Spaces are allowed, so let's put a space there. And hyphens are allowed, underscores are allowed, so that's fine. And then here, let's put a plus to make sure that it's at least one of these letters or more. Great, very nice. So if not this pattern, then they'll use that. Okay, so everything is good here. That's a zip file name over there. So let me copy the. So we have our new zip archive and we open it with the file name here, of course. So let's put the zip file name there. Zip archive create, good. And then let's add files. So we'll be adding files one by one. And then finally here, we want to echo out the result of that clause. So I'll leave that there so we can get a result. Now, when adding files, of course, we have to do a loop. So a for each loop with new files. This is new files right here. So right here we do, so let me close this together and let me put a for each loop here with new files, and this one is file. We don't need the key, but we can leave that there. It's doing no harm. So let me move this internally. So the file name is obviously this one. So copy and paste. Now the file name could have a folder name in it. So the name instead, what we're going to do is let's tell it to get just the best name like that and file. Okay, pretty good. So once that is done, then we close. Okay, I think we are good to go. Let's see what we get from this. So I will refresh the page and I will put a zip name. I'll say this zip. Okay, click to select and select a few files here, open and zip. So as you can see, we have the result of boolean true, which means we did make what we wanted to make. Okay. Yeah, let me come back here and let's check it out, shall we? Okay, so I can't see the file was created here. This zip, this zip. It repeated itself. Why? But it actually worked. So let's open this and we see our files in there. Okay, pretty good. But then there's the issue of it being outside the uploads folder. So that's not a big deal. Let's delete that. And then the repeated name. So let's see what mistake we made to repeat the name. So the name already exists here and we didn't go through here. So this is equal to, oh, I didn't need to concatenate here. Just put the equal sign there. That was my bad. And now for the fact of the zip file name is just the zip file name there. So we can put a folder, we can put it inside the folder and just say folder and concatenate with that like so. Then it will be inside the folder. You can create another folder for the zips. That's entirely up to you. You can make sure that the folder exists by following this procedure here. Okay, so I think that works. And then here, instead of doing this, let's return a meaningful result here. So I'm going to say if, instead of this dump, I'm going to say if this is true, let's echo. Your zip file was successfully created. And then if it didn't go well, we'll say else. Failed to create. Failed to create the zip file. Let's put more exclamation marks, just emergency, right? Okay, and that's it. What else do we need to do here? So you can decide, maybe you want to clear this, you want to remove the stuff in there. That's entirely up to you. In the files thing, you can tell it to refresh. That's entirely up to you. So let's refresh the page and let's try one more time. Click to select. Oh, by the way, if there are no files here, we have to tell the user that please select some files first. So let's see how we can do that here. So if once on the send file, once we say files is equal to, so right here we can do a check. It's very simple. We just say if files.length is equal to 0. Now in JavaScript, if the if statement will only contain one line, you can simply say alert like this. Please select at least one file to upload. So I don't need to put the brackets here. This is valid JavaScript because there's an if statement and there's a single line right next to it. So this works. But the moment I try to add 2 or 3 lines, this doesn't work anymore. Then I'll need the brackets. Now, once it writes this alert, I will need a second line to return so that we don't proceed with this. So let's try this again. Refresh and let's click zip. Your zip file was created successfully. Oh no. Let's try again. Wow. So it's going through whether we like it or not. So here I'm saying if files.length is equal to 0. Okay, so let me alert myself, or let me use a console. I'll say console.log. I want to see the length of those files and why it's not stopping. So let me come back here to zip, go to uploads, and there's actually a zip folder here Wait, what files are in here? There are the files in there. So where is it getting this file information? So it means this thing is not, this is not empty actually. That's why. So not my problem here. No need to console.log. Let me just do a hard refresh. The problem with HTML is that even when you refresh the page, it maintains the content, the previous content. Like if I type some stuff here and then I refresh the page, you see the stuff is still there. It's not refreshed or anything until I click on there. Maybe that will work. So now it's working. Please select at least one file to upload. Okay. Let's just say my images. Click to select. Let's select, open, zip them. Okay, good. Maybe now let me create my music. Click to select some files. Let me go to another drive where there is some audio, Bruno Mars here, Enya, and so on. So these are the files, and let's zip. Your zip was created. Took a minute there, but it went through. So as you can see, there's my music here. There's my file. So if I open this one, there's my music there. If I open that one, there's my files there. Okay, so in this whole thing, I hope you have learned something, because that was the point of it all, so that at least you have a grasp of certain concepts and how they work, and how it is important to read through how the function or class works on php.net. It's a very useful resource. Okay, so happy programming on your websites, or I will see you in another video.